Hello, my friend. Welcome to today's podcast episode. Today we have a guest interview for us to dig into. I have Naomi Berm on the podcast today. She is a business coach and social media guru, and she's recently exploded in the last couple months. It's been really fun to follow her. Even since recording this interview, I've just really enjoyed her content because in this episode, we talk about making change and transitioning and following life where it leads us instead of following the planned path that we think is going to bring us success or fulfillment or whatever it is. So I hope that you enjoy this conversation with Naomi. We are back, baby. The podcast went on a little break over the summer, but we're back. I'm going to be talking about, in some upcoming episodes, I'm going to be talking about some routines, a health and wellness update, but just in case you think you're missing out on a lot or you've missed me, don't forget to check out Patreon. For $5 a month, you get extra exclusive content, and I've been uploading in Patreon. I did a girl chat in there, so if you're just wanting a lighthearted listen of an update in what is going on, I kind of rounded out the Success God's Way series that I briefly touched over the summer. And then I talk about my quest as of now, mental toughness, and how I'm done being an emotional weenie. So if you've missed out on solo content, make sure you guys check out Patreon, $5 a month, and let's roll into today's episode with Naomi. Welcome to Living in Sync. This is a wellness and lifestyle podcast for ladies in their 30s. We've got a lot going on, and on this show, we're going to talk about it all. I'm your host, Joelle. If you're into health, wellness, fitness, beauty, fashion, business, career, time management hacks, organization, girl chats, goal setting, mom things, and everything in between, I hope this show supports you in whatever you need today. Let's dig into today's episode. My friends, I'm so excited to introduce to you Naomi. Welcome to the Living in Sync podcast. We're happy to have you here.
Hello. Thank you, Joelle. I'm so excited to be here. And truly, just to give you guys a little bit of insight into me and my journey and, knowing that you're not alone. So my name is Naomi Birmingham, and I actually am the CEO and founder of the Busy Mama Collective, which is a social media management company. And so I really have enjoyed the last 6 months pivoting into that space. And it's so ironic because my background is actually, I'm a chef by trade and a certified nutritionist, and became a mom. And so along this journey of having my 2 beautiful girls and being married to my husband, I very quickly found that I wanted a company and a business of my own for starters.
Mm-hmm.
But really, I wanted to be in this space of being able to have freedom and manage my own time and more flexibility. And so I think for all of us, that's very attractive in a lot of ways. But I, in this process, have been able to grow this amazing company that's founded on business and motherhood. So my mission with my business is to support other women who are in business, who are also moms. And so I'm just excited to be on with you today, talking to your community too, because I know so many of them, are in the same walk of life.
Oh, yeah. And as you guys know, that when I bring on a guest, what we're really going to hit home with and resonate with is the realness of how life tends to go. And as you talked about, Naomi, you've gone from chef, certified nutritionist, social media management, and other career paths. And I think you've had some really incredible changes and transitions lately. And I think with motherhood or career, whether that's business or in life, changing from one company to another, we're going to need to learn and navigate changes and transitions really well. And that's something, I did not come into motherhood with navigating changes and transitions gracefully, because it's like when your kids are babies, they're in a certain rhythm and routine, but then it quickly changes and then it quickly changes. And I was just like, and whether it's we're going into the back to school season or if you're navigating a career pivot, I just want us to have a raw and candid conversation about navigating changes and transitions. So, why don't you share with us really, when I say big changes or big transitions in your life, are there any times that are sticking out to you?
Yeah. So, gosh, it's been so interesting, especially in motherhood. Over the last 6 years, I've gone through a lot of different transitions. I went from working almost 50 hours a week as a manager of a Starbucks to being a stay-at-home mom in the midst of the pandemic. And that was a whole thing in and of itself. And then in the midst of that, I actually lost my father as well. So navigating, new motherhood and grief and all of the things. But then, even in this new season of life I'm in, I now have two kids. I had worked at their preschool for a short time. And then as I started and grew my social media management business, now being a full-time entrepreneur and also juggling that and life with motherhood. And, specifically right now in this season I'm in, my biggest struggle has been my health, which is so ironic, and I know I share this with you, but it's like for the listeners, like I have a background in this. And so it's so interesting to me, as I've always told people that, you need to put health as your priority. You need to put your health in the forefront. And, now I have this other view of, reality and busyness and life and juggling all of the things and really that human piece of it, and how do we navigate those transitions and also put ourselves first so that we can, show up better and more fully in the rest of our life.
Yeah. When there have been the times where you've gone from one thing to the next, do you feel like it's been an all at once, or do you try to navigate things with like small steps and small waves of incrementing it instead of just being like, okay, I'm going to stop doing this and now I'm doing that? What do you feel like is the best way for you that's worked for you in navigating that?
Yeah, I think I learned so much in losing my dad. And that hands down was, the hardest thing that I've ever gone through. My dad was the closest person in my life, and he died very suddenly. Within 16 days of being diagnosed with a brain tumor, he actually passed away. So it was a very, very interesting story. And that's like a whole story for another time. But really what I learned in that, because I hadn't dealt with grief to that capacity before, was I kind of got hit with everything all at once. So during that time, I had recently stepped down from my job. And because of my dad passing, I decided to part ways with Starbucks and, be home full time. And that was something we were working towards anyways, but it was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back then. So, my husband and I said, this is it. Like, let's just take this as a sign. And I started staying home. And so all of that happened during the pandemic when the world was shut down. And like, we had a very, very reduced amount of connectedness with other humans. And I like to call myself an introverted extrovert, and I really like thrive off of that connection with people, as I know that we all found out so many of us do in a lot of ways, even if you are more introverted.
Right.
But being like newly navigating stay-at-home motherhood would have been hard in itself, right? Because it's a big transition. But then on top of that, all these other things happen. And so it was almost like this rush of transition. And for me, that was such a good learning and one that I'm still working through, and it's been, gosh, 4 years. But I learned that in the midst of all of that feeling so consuming and overwhelming, that I need to do what you just said, which is take things in bite-sized pieces. And really, the mantra that I've kind of lived by over the last few years is one day at a time and one
Yes.
step at a time. And really just saying, okay, I woke up today, and that is a huge blessing in itself. And so even when life is hard, even when the things that are happening around me feel like a lot and feel really overwhelming, what can I do right now in this moment to take one foot and put it right in front of the other and just kind of keep moving forward versus letting that be overwhelming and consuming. And it's easier said than done in a lot of moments, but I think that has really helped me stay grounded in a lot of really hard times.
Yeah. That's very true. Very true. When that happens in your life where there's loss and there's grief, like I can definitely hold space in that to a sense because it was something my family had experienced in the spring of this year. And I think so often in motherhood, in life, and in career, and if you're in the entrepreneur space, you hear phrases like your highest self, your future self, your greatest potential, and various things like that. And it's so great to have a telescope vision. But I think the sweetness of life is in the microscope vision. And that is what is today as it is today, with
Mhm.
who is around you today, with where you are at today. And in the midst of changes and transitions and starting different career paths or navigating life after loss, that sight of we're just focusing in on showing up as best we can today, and as best we can today does not mean 100% all of the time, where like you act in this way, you show up in this way. It's just being in the space and place of where you're at, and kind of even acknowledging that season that you're in, when you're in the midst of grief, acknowledging that's where we're at today. That's the lens that's on today. When you're in new entrepreneurship, acknowledging I can't compare my chapter 1 to somebody else's chapter 50. When you're starting a health and fitness journey, looking at the people on Instagram who have been either working out for years, or the ladies that are in their 20s that haven't had their belly stretched to max capacity 2 times, right? And it's putting that lens back on of like being here, being today. So I love that you shared this one day at a time mantra that you've clung to, because ladies, if you listen to other podcast episodes or upcoming ones that I have, I'm really kind of saying the same thing, but in different ways when it comes to just a lot of things in life. And I know as an entrepreneur myself, I've been in business for over 13 years now and have navigated and pivoted and done different things throughout my career. There has been times where I get stuck in identity, like whether it's the identity of what I thought I was going to be doing or the identity of what it once was. When I say that, and when there's whether it's identity or ego or anything like that, as you've navigated newness in career, business, or in like starting kind of fresh square one as well in your health and wellness journey, is there any sort of like identity piece that you feel stands out to you?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I feel like, you commonly hear, especially in the world we live in, right? Social media. You hear a lot on the internet, like, I lost myself in motherhood. And I always thought that that was such an interesting thing to say because I'm like, but you're still you.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
How
Like you're
naive.
still here. Hey, you're not lost. I can see you.
Clearly, you're not a mom.
Right, right.
Because going into motherhood, like I do in a sense feel like I lost myself a little bit. And not to say that, oh, this person's gone, right? But you're completely changed forever. And it doesn't matter what that looks like as far as, how many kids you have, or, I have a couple of friends who have like had pregnancies and lost those pregnancies. And so whatever stage of motherhood, like if you have conceived, you can call yourself a mother, right? And so it's like in this season of motherhood, I think it's so easy to lose yourself. And one of the things that I think I always come back to for myself and like my identity is feeling like I have purpose. What is my purpose? And so almost it's not even for me really like an identity thing anymore. It's more of like how am I living my life almost soul led and following my intuition with things in what feels good for me. I think so often I would go back to this place of, you know, what society has for us, right? And so, culturally in America, like we over the years have been, mom is the person at home and dad is the breadwinner, and we've come out of that a lot, right? We've progressed and all of these things, but even still there are a lot of people that see that as how roles are divided, and there's women who want that, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with, I don't see any of the roles as wrong or right. I believe that you have to do what feels good for you and your family, and that's between you and your spouse to decide, right? And so when I think about, though, like identity, for me, it's like it's internal, it's soul. And it's like, I think for so long I had guilt about shifting that and changing my mind and how that would impact my family or my kids. And at the end of the day, I always keep coming back to me. And like, you have to have that selfish piece of you, not that it's, oh, it doesn't matter how this impacts anyone else, but more so of like, we get this one life to live, and we get the chance to show up as ourselves every day. And almost tying it to that one day at a time, it's like one moment at a time, but also understanding that like tomorrow isn't promised for any of us. And so when I think about my life and, when that day comes for me of like, I'm at the end of my life, like, what does that look like? Do I want to reflect back and say, I didn't stay true to me? And I think we all are constantly growing and figuring out who we are and what that looks like for us. And understanding, though, that you can change that at any point in any direction. Like when you don't feel like your life is aligning with your soul and your intuition and your heart, like allowing yourself the freedom and the space to say, okay, how can I do this in a way that is respectful of, the people around me and my family and who are doing life with me, while also staying true to me. And so even right now in my journey, I'm experiencing that a lot with like, I really have gotten away from prioritizing my health, being home for the last few months and transitioning to being home. I thought, oh, I'm going to work out every day. I'm going to do all these things. And I have so much passion behind what I do in my business that I've allowed myself to put that first and not put my health first. And so really coming back to, it's not selfish for me to spend 20 to 30 minutes a day on my health every morning and not answer my phone or not pick up my phone before my business hours, and really sticking to that boundary so I can allow myself the space for that. And it's actually making me honestly a better human and a better leader and a better, business owner in my space, because I'm putting myself first and giving myself more energy on a daily basis to, take the steps to grow in that way as well. So
Yeah. I love this question so much because I think it paints a beautiful picture of like how you're navigating it all realistically. Is what does a typical day in the life look like for you right now?
yeah. So weekly, both of my kids are only gone 3 days a week together. So Mondays and Fridays, I have one or both of them home. So really my work week is 3 days a week, and it's only 5-hour days. So it's really short. And so as a mom, like externally, you're probably hearing that thinking, like, oh, a 15-hour work week and also getting, those 4 days a week home with your kids, that sounds glorious. And while it is, and it's like such a dream to be able to be doing the things that I've worked so hard for, it also is a goal of mine to continue to grow and to continue to expand my business. And so it's been really tricky, navigating how do I grow this within that time span. And for me, like, waking up every day, it's a shift right now, right? Like I'm relearning how to prioritize my health right now. And so I would say really for me, it's, getting up in the morning and spending that time with myself. Even when I wasn't doing like any kind of exercise routine, I've always prioritized first thing in the morning, the first 15 to 30 minutes, I do a little bit of journaling and I read a book. I love to read. And so that is like something I can do for myself while I have my coffee before my kids get up. But having that space for me and making sure I have protected time for me, which isn't perfect every day. I
Right, right,
don't care
right.
what anyone tells you. I have my morning coffee every day, yes, but half the time, my reading time does get interfered with by my kids, which is great, and it's a season. But then, once the girls are out the door to school, it's client work for me. And so it's pretty much nonstop because I only have a limited amount of time on the days where they're both gone. And then, I typically once they get home will wrap up, my work day while they're here with me and just staying in touch with my clients that I have. But it's really funny. I remember my husband has been remote since the pandemic, and I remember telling him at one point, like, well, why can't you just help more, like during your work day? Like, you're home. And he's like, I'm working. And I'm like, but you could be doing laundry in between calls. You could be doing this between calls and all of these things, right? Because we have this thought that, well, you're home, so you should be doing stuff. And I think the same goes for stay-at-home moms, right? Where it's like,
Hmm.
well, you're a
Hmm.
stay-at-home mom. Why is the house dirty? And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Right.
The phone. So for me, it was definitely a good eye opener too, being home more, because I'm like, okay, you know, it's easy for you to look around and say what needs to get done here, but if you want to have, a full work day and success in that capacity, it is truly learning how to almost compartmentalize and do one thing at a time. And we're women, so we love to multitask, but
Right, right, right.
sometimes it's not the best choice for you. So,
So then
yeah.
it's basically like then you get your work block, then you get your girls again, and then it's like then every mom knows the rigmarole that dinner, cleanup, bath time, bedtime,
Yep.
and then rinse and repeat, right?
I
And
call it the
so
blur.
yeah, and so
It's
I
the 4 hour blur.
it's literally, it really truly does get better as your kids are older, because my oldest is almost 8, my youngest is 6, and
Mm,
it's entirely different when you can look at your 8-year-old and be like, hey, can you go take a shower and put your jammies on, and they're just independent to go do that on their own. The day gets there, right? And then that's where you can kind of navigate the new waters with the different seasons. But and that's why I wanted to share that, like, what does a typical day look like? Because a lot of times we think like take it one day at a time, go towards your goals means you're doing all of these extravagant things all the time every day, and it's really a lot of done well mundane things over and over and over that
yeah.
lead to you progressing into the ideal life that you want for you and your family when you're wanting to make a change, when you're wanting to transition from one thing to another, right?
Mm,
And so with that and talking about that, like, to the woman listening right now, like, this is totally your chance to soapbox to her, where she's a mom, she's got like something else on her heart, whether it feels like, should I look to apply for a different job, should I look into doing something on my own and in my with my own skill set, doing my own thing, or simply being like, am I being called to stay home with my kids and have that going on, or have that family dynamic? What is your advice? Because we know what it feels like there's fear, there's scare, like there's some scary thoughts going on, like, how is this going to work out? Well, if we don't have this benefit or income, then how are things going to play out? What advice do you have for that mom that's like, I want to change, I want to transition into something else, but like I'm feeling a little nervous about it?
yeah. So I love the analogy of, you know, when our kids are learning to walk, how do we cope with that? Do they fall and we say, well, guess you can't do it? Or do we say, get back up and try again, right? And so one of the things that I learned in my journey is I was working all these hours. And when I had my daughter, I'll never forget, going back to work. And it was the hardest thing because even though she was with my own mom, of all
Yeah.
people, like she wasn't at daycare. And that was a journey in itself when we experienced, that transition. But she was with family, but even that was like, I'm her mother. I should be the person. This is hard. Like, but we financially weren't at a place where I could be home. And so in that, and then transitioning to being a stay-at-home mom, which is what I had thought that I wanted, I learned very quickly that it was not what I wanted. And so I think as a mother, there's two pieces to this, right? One, allow yourself the opportunity, if you and your family can make it happen, to do what your heart is feeling called to do. But then on the flip side of it, if it ends up not being what you thought, that's okay. And I think when I became a stay-at-home mom and I hit a point of craving more for myself outside of just doing that, and learned that, okay, I want to try to do something, to start my own business, to put myself out there, to have that flexibility while also having a career for myself, because I learned that I need that and that I am meant for more than just that one identity, if you will, of motherhood. And so for me, it was like, I had so much guilt. I had so much guilt around like, well, but this is what I've wanted. Why am I being so ungrateful? And it almost was like this kind of negative self-talk of like, how could you change your mind in this? You've wanted this for years now. You're finally getting it. Like, how is that fair to like my husband? How is that fair to my daughter? How is that fair to all of these things I had planned, right? And I think that's the beautiful part about transition and pivoting is that you get to decide it's not what you wanted after all. And that's okay. And there's almost this freedom that comes with releasing that guilt because as we said before, you do only get one life, and you really being able to say to yourself every day, like that you are showing up authentically and what feels good for you is so freeing in so many ways. And again, I mean, as a mom, it is our job to role model those choices and how we navigate transition for our kids. And there's something so empowering about being able to say, I tried, but it wasn't for me. What kind of lesson does that teach our children? It doesn't teach that you're a quitter. You see things through, and if it's not really, where you feel compelled to be anymore, it's okay to make changes. And there's something beautiful about that, right? So I think that for all the moms listening, like just empowering yourself to one, take things one day at a time, right? But then also, allowing yourself to let your soul guide you to where you want to be. If where you want to be right now is not aligning with where you are, what are the steps that you need to take to get there? And sometimes that's a really massive conversation and a really big change for you in your life. But I never wanted to, in motherhood, look back and say that I missed certain things with my kids. And no amount of money was worth that to me. And so my husband and I both sat down and talked about what does it look like to figure that out and to truly figure it out. And so, I know not everyone is fortunate to have a partner all the time to where that's the case, where that's like, oh, my husband has a really great paying job. I can stay at home. There's single moms out there who have dealt with that transition in their life. And that's not something that they can just do. They can't just like up and quit their jobs and move on and do other things, right? And that's something that obviously I feel like has to be said because it's not like I'm not living in this fantasy world where this reality of mine is just like this big luxury. We had a lot of things we had to figure out for me to be able to make those transitions. We've had a lot of things we've had to figure out for me to start my own business and journey in entrepreneurship. Like there's a lot that goes behind the scenes, and I'm not one to like sugarcoat and be like, I've worked
I
these
just quit. Like I'm
work
just
weeks
done.
and I just
Yeah.
quit my job and everything's great. Like there's things you have to navigate, right? But I think, really thinking about what does that look like for me? Where do I want to be, 10, 15 years from now? Do I want to look back and say, I didn't even try? Or do I want to at least give it a shot? And what's the worst thing that can happen? You fall and you get back up again.
Yeah. Permission slip granted. I think there's so many things, especially in the personal development world, where it's like you hear the phrase like don't have a plan B. The fact that you have a plan B is the reason why your fill in the blank isn't working. And then there's the other side of the coin, like you just said, where literally permission slip granted to change your mind. My good friend and one of my mentors, Andrea Crowder, always says, I give myself the permission to change my mind about anything, anyone at any time. And truly, my friends, think about that. If you feel like you want to try a different thing, and then you find out, like, come to find out, and let's like just take something as silly as, oh, you find a recipe on Pinterest that you want to try for you and your family, and you guys don't like it. You don't blow just be like, I'm never cooking again, I'm never stepping into the kitchen again. You're just like, that wasn't for us.
Yep.
Nobody liked it. Don't want to try it again. You don't try it again, and you move on. You still have to get up and make the next meal for breakfast or for lunch or whatever it is, right? And so, with I think our conversation just rounds about very beautifully in the sense of that permission slip to take the step forward and
Yep.
to know and navigate that change and transition isn't perfect. You talked about that. You may have to say, well, if we're going to do this, then this is going to have to happen. If we're going to do that, then this is what we're going to do instead. And come from it as a place of like, this is our empowerment choices, not necessarily like, well, then that's being taken away and that's not going to happen anymore. But coming from is like, and we're okay with that because that's the type of change and transition that we're okay with making in navigating this newness, whether we go down a path of a new career or a new health and fitness journey, whatever it is, to try things and get back up and try again until you find what is right for you. So I think this is really, really, really beautiful. And my final question, well, I guess we'll end it for sure on telling people where they can follow you, find you, what it is that you do for serving others. But to round it out with the last question, what are the things that you truly love to do for you to stay in the essence of like, yes, you're a mom of two girls and online entrepreneur and all of that, but what are some of those things that like are the true things that fill your cup up or that are unique to you, that are your interests or hobbies?
Yeah. It's so funny because if you would have asked me a couple years ago, I would have said, well, I love to like bake, but that's become like a daily thing in our
Right.
household. So it's almost more of like, I don't appreciate it as much, which sounds so silly, but I think for me, like, I love to get outside. And
Mm-hmm.
so even if my kids are with me, like going on walks and getting out of the house and going outside and just being outside, I always thought it was so interesting, like the concept of grounding. And I had never actually tried it, but like even just like recently that's something that I've tried and I'm like, it makes such a huge difference. Like just putting your toes in the grass and like just being and like really taking that time to get some sunshine and like that lights me up a lot. Hobby wise, we don't, my husband and I don't actually get out much. So, in case there's any other moms out there that can relate, we don't have family locally. So, we try to give each other time to like do our hobbies and things that we love to do, but oftentimes I actually don't. For me, I love to paint. So, I paint with my girls a lot. I actually really
Yes.
color. I
Yeah.
find coloring so therapeutic. So I've gotten like I have my own calligraphy notebook. I've self-taught myself calligraphy and like adult coloring books so that I can do things that like fill my cup in this season of life that I'm in. But my husband and I, like my dream is I would love to have like some kind of lake house and a boat, and we love to fish. So like just even forward thinking, I'm like, it would be so nice to just be able to go and like spend the day on the lake and have our kids there with us and be able to do, some of those things that we really love to do. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah.
Those are awesome. I love that so much. And it brings back to so much of the simplicity. And there can be beauty very much in like keeping some things to yourself. But also as your kids grow, it's so fun to pick up hobbies with them. For example, my oldest is starting to get into pickleball, and now it's evolved into him and I had a pickleball date night. And then it evolved into we now have 4 pickleball paddles and bought a pickleball net to have in our like concrete slab driveway. So we can we don't have to go to the pickleball courts. We can just
Gosh.
set it up in our driveway. And 4th of July, we woke up and we were driving to the lake, and it was a family member's cabin. And I'm the same as you. Like, that's the ultimate goal and dream. And I tell all of my friends that have family or in-laws or whatever that have a lake place they can go to, I'm like, show gratitude and appreciation, because I'm working my butt off to make that happen for like my future,
Yep.
like for my kids and for family and friends to come and have a place like that where they feel welcomed and to have like a little sanctuary of my own. But we were driving in the car and we were driving past golf courses, and I'm like, that would be a cool family tradition to go golfing to kick off the 4th of July weekend. I don't know how to golf. So I'm like, I need to start taking golf lessons. My husband is into it, has gotten into it because of work. There's a lot of like work social situations. And so this was the first summer I put one of our boys in golf lessons. And now I know like we're going to prioritize being in golf because it's just a good hobby to have, to know how to do. I don't imagine any of us being ones that take it that seriously, but at least, like you can. And I tried wake surfing this year. So or last year I tried it, and I got up on the wake surf again this last weekend, which was so fun. And so with all that you're talking about, like knowing hobbies can be as simple as painting with your girls. My boys absolutely loved. One day I just took like one of the cardboard boxes that came in the mail that, we need to flatten out. And I just was like, here's paintbrushes for you. Here's paintbrushes for you. That's your section. This is my section. And even my boys just loved painting together. And we put that piece of cardboard back in the garage. It dried. My husband now uses it in the garage for very when he has to fix on things. And the other day he was changing the oil, and I was like, you're using our painted cardboard. That's so cute.
That's my art.
Yes, it's our artistry in work with you. But just keep it really, really fun, and no, it doesn't have to be as like formal or serious. It can be with your kids or without your kids. It can be something that you just do at home when the kids are quiet. And so I think that's really, really fun and really special. And it's a good, once again, balance of what we talked about is like things you're doing now that are realistic for the life and the season that's right here, right now. But also you have that telescope vision of like the lake days and the boat and the fishing and all of that stuff. So really, really cool. Thank you so much for joining me today. Where can everybody follow you, find you? What are you up to? What kind of communities do you have that they can connect into if you have any?
Yeah, so for anybody who owns their own business that's looking for social media management services, I'm the Busy Mama Collective on Instagram. And then I also actually recently started doing business coaching. So I actually coach other business owners who maybe aren't either ready to invest yet in social media management services or are just looking to start out their own business online. And so I actually offer both group and one-to-one coaching for business owners. And you can find me at Naomi Berm on Instagram as well for those. And yeah, I run a 6-figure mama mastermind community. I'm launching a brand new program today, actually, of all days. And so I'm teaching business owners how to market their businesses both on Pinterest and Instagram.
Cool.
Through my program called Pinstagram Pro. So yeah.
Love that. Okay, I will make sure to leave everything linked in the show notes for you guys where you can go search, look, follow, and we will talk to you next time. Bye. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you loved what you heard or you want to share your favorite episode topics, please leave a rating and review. This helps the podcast growth and gives people an idea of what the podcast is all about. Something new and exciting that I wanted to share with you before we go is that we now have a Patreon page. This has replaced the Feminine Edge collective community in a cohesive place that is easier for me to manage and cheaper for you. If you are interested in our monthly classes, exclusive day in the life vlogs, Bible studies, community Q&A, and more, go to patreon.com/livingInSync and join for just $5 a month. Check out the show notes for any links or details of things referenced in today's episode, and I look forward to chatting with you in the next one.